I'm Ben Cummings, and we have been farming homesteading for the past 4 years. I can't believe it's been 4 years already. I feel like just yesterday we were building a chicken coop and I had no idea what I'm doing. Granted, I still have no idea what I'm doing. So I wanted to give you 10 tips that we've learned over the past few years that if you are just starting, trying to get this figured out, trying to start homesteading or looking into it, and you're like overwhelmed by all of the like beautiful Instagram whatever, all the stuff online that you see that isn't real, because the reality of homesteading is that it is a lot more difficult and a lot different than what people make it look like and glamorize on Instagram. So here are the top tips of things that we've learned over the past 4 years on our homestead. And I have a list. Look, my pretty little list. You read that? I'm gonna focus on the list. I'm Ben, and this is Nicole.
Food is medicine.
Since 2020, with no prior experience,
I even managed to kill corn.
we've been trying to grow all of the food for our family.
Look, they came in a fancy box.
But it's proved to be a little harder than we thought.
In 2021, this didn't exist. This was dead.
Join us as we struggle to raise animals, grow veggies
That's okay, because we have no cabbage, so we're not making cabbage soup anyway, so what do we need carrots for?
on this farming and homesteading adventure. Number one is take it slow. I have found more often than not, if I just quickly try to throw something together, I'm going to fail. I've set myself up for failure, and I definitely don't like that and don't want that for the future, whether it's fences or pens or getting animals too soon, which we like to do because we think it's funny sometimes. But the reality is it kind of makes it more difficult, and you take yourself 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And that's not fun when you're actually trying to do things and be able to succeed. So taking it slow and not feeling bad about that. If you don't have the finances to be able to do it, you don't have the physical ability, you don't have the time, don't worry about it. Just do it at your own pace. Everybody seems to look online and they see, oh, you get chickens and then you need goats and don't worry about it. You do you, and do what you enjoy. Not everybody enjoys the same things. I'm kind of over chickens. We've had chickens for a while now, and I'm done with chickens. So we're kind of moving on to other animals that I do enjoy. And now we're even talking about commercializing. Okay, what can we raise to be able to sell the meat? Can we sell our sheep wool? Can we sell goat meat? Can we sell pork? Those are things we're looking into more, because there are things we don't like. Broilers, we don't like raising meat chickens. We love ducks, so we'll probably raise more ducks. But we've just figured those things out over time. So 1, take it slow. Number 2 is cheaper is sometimes better. Because we don't make a lot of money, we don't have the capacity. I mean, don't get me wrong. I would love to have a barn dominium. I would love to have all of these things that you see your favorite YouTubers and your favorite Instagrammers have, and that's just not us. Even our fences are mostly made of pallets because they're cheap, free, and they work really, really well. Those materials are great for being able to actually make things from. It's fine wood, especially if you're using the heat-treated ones. It's not like it's treated with chemicals. You don't have to worry about it. And for us, that just works. Another thing which kind of Nicole hates, but I like to gather materials that are from other people's projects or from teardowns that people are tearing down a barn and we get some old roofing or they're whatever. I like to salvage things, and we kind of have piles of that stuff around the yard. But it comes in handy. Our greenhouses, I sat on the plastic for those greenhouses for 3 years before we had time to actually use it and build it. It just sat in a pile, and every time I looked at it, I felt stupid for having this pile of plastic that was just degrading over time. But we finally used it and saved ourselves thousands of dollars because we used free materials for the most part for our greenhouses. Both of the greenhouses that we have now, which one is 25 feet by 17 foot, and the other is 17 foot by 20 feet. We built both of them for less than $500. I bought the rebar to be able to put the poles in the ground, and then bought some strapping and some wiggle wire to be able to actually hold down the plastic. Most of that stuff was free, and part of that goes to taking it slow, number 1, but also being able to develop a community, to be able to figure out who around you can barter with, borrow from. We live in a society where we're chronically independent and we want to do things ourselves and figure this out ourselves. But the more that you can be part of a community that actually genuinely cares about you, it's not just keeping tabs of, oh, this is mine and I do this for you, so you owe me. If you can figure out a good community of people that you have that like, hey, I need to build something. Can you come? I'll help you. You help me. Just genuine friends that for some reason our society seems to have lost over the past 20 years. But having actual people that care about you and are willing to help you and your family is invaluable, whether it's free labor, but not taking advantage of people, or free materials that somebody is throwing stuff away. We got a bunch of windows that we still have that we'll be able to build other things with that we were going to use for a greenhouse that were completely free because people were throwing them away. So utilizing those materials shouldn't make you feel bad. You don't need to buy brand new stuff to make everything look beautiful. You can still make it look beautiful with used stuff, but it may take a little extra work, but free is often better, especially when you just don't have the budget. Number 3 is kind of foolish, but goats have become one of my favorite animals. Currently, the animals that I love the most are our pigs, our goats, and, oh, dang it, I kind of love them all. That's why I have them. I was going to say my pigs, goats, and ducks. I really love the ducks. And I do love the sheep, though. Shoot. This is supposed to be very poignant about how I love goats because goat's milk and goat's meat. But now that I'm thinking about it, okay, here's the rundown. We wish we had a cow. If we had a cow, we probably wouldn't have sheep or goats. But because we don't have the land for a cow right now, we pasture our sheep for meat and our goats for milk. Or goat, I guess, for milk. And that just is what works for us. And I think for other homesteaders, that is kind of the key too, is figuring out what works for you. And that is what works for us. Is this like in my face? Is this very dumb? Should I move this? I feel like it's just sticking in my face like an annoying amount. Let's see if can we rotate this a little bit? Not better. There we go. Now you're not up in my face. Yeah, if we had a cow or a couple of cows, I think what we would do is we'd have a ton of meat for one, but then we'd also have a ton of milk so we can make cheese and butter. I wish the restrictions in Canada for small dairies weren't what they are for raw milk, or just it's almost impossible to start up a small dairy, like very difficult with regulations and paperwork and requirements. So I don't think it's something we'll end up doing anytime soon, but I would like to. Maybe we'll figure it out where and when the time comes, if it's something that we can do. But I love our goats. I love our sheep. I'm an animal guy. I have a bachelor's degree in biology and I love animals. So it kind of just makes sense for me to have all of the animals because I love them. Number 4 is you do not need 100 acres. A lot of people moving here specifically to New Brunswick feel like they need to come and they need to buy 100 acres to be able to do what they want to do. And that's not necessarily true. We've talked to a lot of people. One person that I follow, Jean-Martin Fortier in Quebec, does amazing things with his market garden on a very small plot of land. I got the chance to interview him. This summer, which was an incredible experience. And we'll be sharing that on the channel eventually. We got to get through some other edits right now, but this summer was jam-packed with interviewing farmers that are doing really cool things in small spaces. And that farm that he has there is 3/4 of an acre, and they clear about $300,000 worth of produce off of it. Now, they don't really have room for a bunch of animals. They don't really have, it's strictly vegetables, but they do a great job at intensively growing there in their greenhouses and being able to figure out in their permanent raised beds, which is what we're trying to go to here. They've been able to figure out sort of what to do. And I've been reading his book and really inspired by his words and by the small capacity that he has. So you don't need 100 acres. You don't need a ton of land. What more land allows you to do is to be able to spread things out, to be able to do more, to have pasture. If we had more land, I would love it. I wouldn't have to spend as much on feed for our animals. They could graze a little more, but we did buy property. We did buy 35 acres up the hill. We were blessed to be able to have enough money to do that this year, but it's completely raw land, and we haven't done anything with it. It's going to be a lot of work over the next few years to make it what we need it or want it to be. But for now, it works. Like we like it the way we did buy 35 acres up the road that we're going to eventually use, and that's going to take a lot of work to be able to clear and put up fencing and make it work. But personally, I think 10 acres would be perfect, especially if you had some room for pasture. There's lots of capacity with 5 or 10 acres that you can do. But I like having started on a small homestead on 3/4 of an acre where we are now, because it affords us the opportunity to figure things out small. We're not making massive gardens. We haven't convinced ourselves that we need to go out and buy a tractor, because we have the capacity to do a lot here already, and we're figuring it out tiny so that when we do expand or 5x, 10x, okay, we kind of know how to do that. It's a little different implementation, but you just don't need 100 acres. If you are being a commercial farmer and you want to sell to distributors in the grocery store, yeah, sure, you need 100 or thousands of acres, but that's not where we're at. We're still in the homesteader, tiny farm, market garden realm, which to us makes more sense to be able to implement agriculture, to implement organic practices and regenerative agriculture. And like I said, following Jean Martin, following people like Richard Perkins, are incredible people who are doing really good work that I would like to do that someday. We're hoping to get to there, but we're first generation farmers. We have no idea what we're doing. Our parents never did this. Our grandparents never did this. We didn't inherit anything. We're doing this ourselves, working our butts off to be able to get there. And I feel like a lot of our generation are too, is you're trying to figure this out. You have no idea what you're doing. That's probably why you're watching this video. And that's a good thing, because we're in this together. We've met incredible people. We learned from incredible people all over the world and right here at home. So the more friends you have, which goes back to number 2, is cheaper is sometimes better. If you can barter, you can trade, you can find friends that you can do things with, because you don't always need to jump headfirst into having your dairy animal to get your milk, having your massive garden to be able to grow all your tomatoes and all your carrots. If you like that and you want to, like us, do it. Absolutely do it. But you don't have to have 100 acres. This one's a sad one. Number 5, with livestock comes deadstock. I remember the first time I had to cull a rooster. We had brought in some new chickens and a rooster, and we already had a rooster. My first rooster, Mr. Tim. Tim was a beautiful boy. And we brought in this rooster who was a barred rock, and his name was Lips. And Lips was a little bit bigger than Tim, and we put them in the coop together, and they clashed heads so fast. And I didn't notice that until like a few hours later. I went to check on them. This was still when we were very green to birds and animals, and there was blood everywhere. And I felt so bad, because our rooster was the one that was getting beat up. It wasn't Lips. It wasn't the new rooster that was getting beat up. It was our rooster. And like, he had his girls. He's a good boy, and I didn't want to punish him for that. So I had to cull the rooster that we had. And that hurt. Like, that was the first time I had to take like, I never grew up hunting. I never grew up around this. So this was new to me. And I remember how heart-wrenching it was that I felt like he was useless to our farm. Like, I could have given him away, but nobody wants roosters, and they can be food. And so one of the hardest things that we've had to learn over the past few years is with livestock comes deadstock. Things are going to die on you. Sometimes it is going to be your fault because you screwed something up. And if you post about it online, people are going to call you an idiot and a terrible person. The vegans are going to come after you. But the reality is, this happens. Animals die. Rabbits die if you look at them sideways. So animals just die. And it's very sad. And it's heart-wrenching. But that ultimately is their purpose. Either you're going to kill them, a predator is going to get them, or something's going to happen. And once you can recognize and sort of figure out in your heart how to deal with that, how to emotionally deal with it, the better off you'll be on your homestead, on your farming journey. And that's not something you have to do. If you're going to keep animals and you want to raise animals, you want to raise animals for meat, you kind of need to at least be okay with the death. It really puts you in tune with your mortality, and it's terrifying. But it's been great to learn that over the past few years, because it really gives me a better appreciation for life and death, a much bigger respect. Number 6, there is always next year. Something we've learned and tried to do over the past few years is figure out proof of concept. I remember the first time I grew a broccoli, the first time I grew a cauliflower, I was so freaking excited. I still get excited when I actually grow something that I've never grown before, or something grows well. And there's always next year. I remember last year and even this year when we finished the garden, when we were tilling it in, and even before that, when we were picking peas, we were like, okay, we know what to do next year. We don't like this kind. We like this kind of beans. We like this kind of cucumbers. We figured it out, and we're like, okay, it's November. We want to start again. Even now, we're talking and discussing about here in December, what are we doing next? What's next year? What's happening? We're planning, we're thinking, we're scheming. And there's always next year. Don't worry if you screw something up, because more likely than not, you've figured out already what you're going to do to fix it. And that's where next year comes in. It sucks that, yes, you likely have to wait a whole 12, 9, 6 months before you can actually do something about it, but that gives you time to prepare and plan and mull it over and think about it over and over, so that when you finally implement it, there's always next year. And you'll figure it out better and bigger than it was before. At least that's how we do it with our garden. I forget what number we're on. I think it's number 7. Document everything you can. This year we didn't spend as much time documenting, and I kind of missed it. We did a lot of other things. We did farm tours, and we did document a little bit, tried to post as much as we could, but we didn't document as much as we'd have in previous years. And so we don't have the record as much of what we grew. We don't have a record as much of what we actually did and how it worked out. And if you can write down or record, if you can somehow document how you do things, you are going to be better off. Because next year you'll be able to refer back to that. I love looking at old footage from 2022, 2021, and looking like, holy crap, how did we go from nothing, being able to grow nothing in the garden, to be able to grow a massive plot of food this past year and still be eating off of canned foods that we have at our house. Like, it's insane to me that we were able to go from nothing to this, what we have today, and people consider us an authority. That's probably why you're watching this video, because you consider us some sort of authority, or you gain interest from these videos. Like, that's crazy to me that we've come so far. And it's cool to be able to look at old videos of yourself. I mean, even this, we have a studio now. I have a studio that I can do this stuff in, that I can talk to you from, that a couple of years ago, this didn't exist. I barely had the basement to be able to film videos in. So this is really cool. And documenting and seeing how far you've come, because sometimes it doesn't feel like it. You're like, oh, I grew a little bit of stuff. I did a little better than last year. But when you actually go back and you watch the videos, you actually go back and read what you did, you're like, oh crap, like, our garden was tiny and now it's massive. And that happened very quickly, rather than thinking back and being like, oh, I didn't do enough. It allows you to have a better perspective on what you're doing and how you're growing and moving forward. Number 8 is be practical. Be practical with your capacity, what you can do, what you can keep. We've made a ton of mistakes, and some of it has been for your entertainment, and some of it has just been because we're dumb and foolish and we don't know what to do. But be practical with your abilities, what you're able to do, what your capacity is to be able to take on, whether it's how many animals or how big of a garden or whatever. Be practical. Don't plant a bunch of things that you're not going to eat. That doesn't make sense. Don't grow a lot of animals that you're not going to eat. That doesn't make sense. Grow things, raise things, do things that move you steps forward. Don't worry about trying to do things that other people are doing, because that may not be for you. But try to figure out ways that work for you, that are practical for you, to be able to move forward in your journey towards set your goals, to figure out where you want to go and how to get there. Because otherwise you're not moving towards your goals. You're just kind of scattered all over the place. And listen, I understand. With the ADHD, it's brutal for me. I'm all over the place all of the time. But sometimes you just got to be practical. Number 9, we are coming close to the end here. Number 9 is, I lost it. Number 9 is, what? Number 9 is homesteading and growing your own food is both easier and harder than you think. How do I say this without being boastful? I was college educated. I had a university degree in biology. I went to welding school, and I thought that this would be so complicated. And it is. Farming can be very, very complicated. But when you bring it down to its roots and what it is, it's throwing seeds in the dirt and watching them grow. There's a lot of in between there and factors that are in play. But for people who are just starting, just test it out. Try it out. See what works and what doesn't. Try your tomatoes. Try your lettuces. Try your cucumbers. Just figure it out. Last year, because we had the baby, we didn't have the capacity to be able to plant a proper garden, a whole garden. So we ended up just chaos gardening the rest of it. We grew a ton of pumpkins. We grew a ton of pumpkins because we were able just to throw pumpkins, seeds and squash seeds all over the place. And we literally just threw them. There was no rhyme, no reason. We just... And between the pumpkins and the zucchini, they grew amazing. And so it's often easier but harder than you think. It takes a lot more work and attention, and a lot of people are constantly telling us, like, wow, you do a lot. You're very busy. And for us, we wouldn't trade this for the world. I couldn't imagine doing anything different. I can't imagine not going out every morning and every evening to milk our goat, to feed our animals, to collect the eggs, or weeding the garden. Like, this is what we love to do. And that's in part how we're going to, or why we're going to transition into market gardening, to sell some vegetables, because we want to succeed. We want to do this more and more. We want to have our feet in the dirt, our hands in the dirt, because we love this. So it can be a lot harder work, especially as you expand. And as we were cutting trees at the new property this year, I was like, holy crap. Like, I thought this would just be like chainsaw, zip, zip. Trees fall, you're good to go. Well, not really. It's not that easy. But when it comes to gardening, it was a little easier than I thought it would be. Just like planted in the grit. Now, certain things aren't as easy to grow, but like, you live and learn. So it's some aspects, and you may have an opposite experience to me, but our experience has been that it's kind of harder and it's kind of easier than we really thought it would be. Especially chickens. Why do people complicate keeping chickens? It's super easy to keep chickens. They're pretty self-sufficient, especially if you free range them. They're easy. Don't come at me for saying that chickens are easy. I don't baby my chickens. I'm not a bougie chicken mama. And last but not least, do not give up. Regardless of where you're at financially, emotionally, mentally, do not give up, because there's always next year. Because with livestock comes deadstock. There is going to be hard seasons. Nicole and I barely remember the past 2 years because of having the baby, and Ezra has been a lot, and then having Sawyer, who's autistic, makes it difficult, and there's been a lot of chaos in our lives the past few years. There's a lot of uncertainty with my job and what I do and the business, and so don't give up. There's always tomorrow. There's always another step forward. There's always something. Do you need to take a rest? Do you need to stop and chill for the winter, for a season? Do you need to stop for a year and reassess where you're at financially, where you're at mentally, to be able to move forward? Are you moving? What are your plans? Where do you want to be? Nicole says that the number of times, both this year and last, that she'd be out in the garden trying to weed or try to pick things, that she'd be crying and weeping, is just too many. She couldn't handle the stress at times. It was too much work. But now, I mean, even still, it's a lot of work. With Ezra, mostly. Toddlers are a lot. But to go in our basement and see all of the canned goods we have and the stuff we have in the freezer, and like, we barely go to the grocery store because of how much we were able to can, preserve, and freeze. And it feels so good to be able to be eating from the food that we grew, the good food that we grew. And then have people that we make food for or bake food for say, wow, this is incredible. Like, yeah, we don't go to the grocery store anymore. And that's our goal, is to have a community of people that love food and care about good food, highly nutritious food that comes from a real farm, not a factory farm, a real family farm of people who give a shit, of growing food, of growing really good, high quality food. And whether that's certified organic or whether that is just growing food that tastes good with natural fertilizers rather than synthetic fertilizers, without pesticides, without chemicals and crap. And that's become kind of a buzzword in the community, but it's true that food today is largely just garbage. And I don't want to eat garbage. I want to have real food that tastes like food. Bacon that tastes like bacon, broccoli that tastes like broccoli, because food doesn't taste like food anymore. Food from the grocery store has no taste. It's tasteless. It's cardboard, because it's raised and grown to be shipped, to last long, to look pretty. I don't want that food. I want food that goes bad, that bacteria want, because that means that my gut bacteria are going to want it and going to want to eat it. But that takes a lot of work. And that means you can't give up. That means you got to work for it. And that means you got to help your brothers, your sisters, your community, your friends. Just don't give up.